Let's grow together. And now with the lesson of today, please help me bring back Reverend Martin.
We've all no doubt heard the phrase, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. The idea is to encourage optimism and a can-do attitude. In the face of adversity or misfortune, there are always possibilities. And whereas lemons suggest sourness or difficulty in life, lemonade is a sweet treat, the good life. Although the saying is attributed to several different authors, most people associate it with Dale Carnegie, who wrote in his 1948 book, How to Stop Worrying and How to Start Living, when life hands you lemons, make lemonade. There have been any number of variations on the phrase. For example, when life gives you lemons, add melted butter, toasted paprika, and dip some lobster in it. Or, I believe that if life gives you lemons, you should make lemonade, and then try to find someone whose life has given them vodka and have a party. Well, what are lemons? In the context of this talk, lemons are the things that bring about misery, fear, and frustration in our lives. You should consider yourself quite blessed if you only get a lemon occasionally. Unfortunately, many people carry around a sack of lemons that constantly weighs them down. And even the so-called lucky people, the wealthy people, the beautiful people, and yes, the spiritual people, even they have their share of bitter and sour experiences now and then. But with the right attitude, the right thoughts, the right beliefs, we can cope with any situation that comes along, no matter how sour or bitter. The ability to see the potential in the direst circumstances is largely a matter of remaining calm and being open to possibilities. Now, an interesting example of this principle is the story of pink lemonade. Pink lemonade is sweet, colorful, and synonymous with summertime. Pink lemonade has been a part of American culture for over 150 years. But have you ever wondered how the popular beverage came to acquire that pastel hue? Well, by the mid-1800s, the growing availability of ice made chilled drinks increasingly popular. And as more people experienced the thrill of enjoying a sweet, cold beverage on a sweltering day, lemonade hit its stride. And around the same time, traveling circuses were taking off. People were coming from miles around to experience death-defying feats and see such oddities as human mermaids, contortionists, and fire breathers. And it only makes sense that they'd want their drinks to be fantastical too. Well, there are conflicting stories about the origin of pink lemonade, but interestingly, they both involve the circus. The first is from 1912, when New York Times obituary of a fellow named Harry Allott, a Chicago native who ran away to join the circus as a young teenager, is said to have invented pink lemonade after accidentally dropping some red candies into a vat of traditional lemonade. And adhering to that old circus adage, the show must go on, Allott simply sold the beverage as is and called it pink lemonade. Now, the second story is a bit more unusual. In the first place, consider this. In those empty fields where they pitched the big top, there was usually no running water available. So any water they had to come in barrels and buckets, and therefore it was very important to use that water carefully. Enter a man named Pete Conklin, who was in charge of concessions for the circus. He ran out of water just before the crowd arrived for the next performance, and thinking on the fly, he grabbed a tub of water in which the performers had just finished wringing out their red tights, dyed red with color that was not color fast. In true circus form, Conklin didn't miss a beat. He marketed the drink as his new strawberry lemonade, and a star was born. From that moment on, sales doubled, and soon no first-class circus was without pink lemonade. I looked this stuff up so you don't have to. But back to lemons. Dealing with a bad situation is not easy. It certainly isn't as easy as making lemonade, but it can be as rewarding and as refreshing as drinking down a big icy glass. It doesn't have to be as difficult as we sometimes make things. So here are 6 things to remember when you're dealing with life's lemons. Number 1, be grateful. Even if your life seems to be completely falling apart, there are still things you can be grateful for. It may be tough at the beginning, but as you consider the good things going on in your life, you'll realize that there are plenty of things, large and small, for which to be grateful. If this practice lifts your mood, that shift may help you realize that you're in control of your life. So here's the idea. Can't run? Be thankful you can walk. Can't walk very well? Be thankful you have legs, and so on. Just in terms of the physical body, the most severely ill person has more going right in the body than going wrong. The human body is that amazing. And so it is that at any given moment in life, there's more going right than is going wrong. But like the TV news business, we all tend to put our focus on what's going wrong. Learn to focus on the good. Be grateful. As the Apostle Paul said, I have learned in all things to give thanks. Second, stay calm. It's very important not to stress out too much, despite the issues happening in your life. Learning to take a deep breath when life is too much can allow you a much-needed relaxation. To go back to the circus for just a moment, one of the most important things a clown learns is how to fall without injuring himself. And the secret is relaxation. The clown goes as limp as a rag doll and falls. And he may do this multiple times a day, every day, up into his 60s, 70s, or even 80s. Now, if he were to tense up, he would get hurt and possibly break a bone or two. Because for most of us, our first inclination when we start to fall is to tense up. Take a tip from the clowns. Relax. And then try to find a spot where you feel safe to reflect on what's happening and how you're going to deal with it. Third, react positively. Moving through your problems with a sense of grace is something you can control. Oh, there are outside forces, of course, but it's up to you how you cope with them. Don't get angry or freak out. Instead, smile and say to yourself, this too shall pass. Reacting negatively, especially if it's toward others, is just going to make you feel even more terrible. Hurricane Matthew went roaring through Florida just a few years ago, and a columnist on the southeast coast was right in the middle of it. And he wrote an interesting column about how he and his wife and his neighbors coped with the storm. He wrote, "We lost power at 10 p.m. Thursday night. Mid-morning Friday, the worst of the storm had passed us. Thank God we only lost one tree, which missed our house, and we only lost one section of our fence. Saturday morning, our power came back on, but it went out again after a couple of hours. I immediately went to a big box hardware store for materials to repair our fence to keep Sammy, our fast-running greyhound, in our backyard. Our power did not return until late Monday evening. At the risk of sounding like a Hallmark card, life has taught me to look for the blessing in every situation. Though I hated being without power, no computer, no phone, and my 60-inch flat-screen TV, I decided to make the best of it. With a hammer, nails, and a hand saw, I rebuilt a long-neglected rotten trellis. Using my axe, I chopped up the fallen tree. I repaired Mary's wooden raised garden box and added new cow manure. I chuckled, thinking, how many guys' wives would be excited about their hubby buying them 80 pounds of manure? The additional exercise proved beneficial to my blood sugar number. There was also a considerable amount of neighbor bonding, helping and consoling each other. Mary and I enjoyed a lovely candlelight dinner, which she prepared on our grill. Relaxing music played on our battery-operated radio. And then this gentleman wrapped up his column with the essential lesson, which is this: serendipity will bring gifts and rewards to you when you least expect it. Serendipity does not favor stagnation, rather it favors movement. This is the only prerequisite for being blessed with the gifts serendipity has to offer. Fourth, learn to accept things. Making lemonade out of lemons implies making the best of a bad situation. And sometimes it's easy to do that, but often people will take a bad situation and kind of sweep it under the rug and then smile and pretend that everything is okay. But that's a dangerous move. You can't just pretend that the situation isn't a mess in the first place. You have to carefully deal with it and put it to rest so that it doesn't cause you additional pain. By pushing away the problem, you only make it stronger. Instead, accept things as they are. That does not mean you have to give in to them. It just means that you're acknowledging your current reality. All too often in this teaching, we live in denial. We feel that if we're suffering from money trouble, health issues, relationship traumas, or whatever, that somehow we're weak and everything we've learned on our path has been a waste of time. Or maybe we're just not good enough to stay on the path. So we pretend that things are okay. Well, the spiritual life is not about denying reality, but rather recognizing the problems for what they are, a wake-up signal, and then dealing with them. So, when faced with a problem, don't try to ignore all the feelings that arise in you. If your heart is aching, feel it. You actually make your feelings less painful or stressful if you admit they exist. If you suffered a loss, it's essential you acknowledge that so the healing can truly begin. And remember that every problem can either be a setback or it can be a set up for something better. Fifth, go outside. Now, this may seem simplistic, but looking at the vastness of the sky or listening to the sound of birds may help you realize that there's something far greater than what's happening inside of you. Taking a walk in nature isn't going to solve your problem per se, but it could make you feel better afterwards. And this, in turn, helps you to face problems with a more positive outlook. And sixth, and maybe the most important, meditate. Even if you don't have a care in the world, I suggest daily meditation because it keeps you grounded. When a major problem in your life does occur, you will have honed the energy and the strategy of non-reaction to whatever's going on around you. You can stay with the issue and allow the storm to pass without panicking. Meditation is like already having your sugar and water ready, just in case a bunch of lemons are thrown your way. I love reading biographies of great men and women, and the one thing that these high achievers have in common is that life handed them all plenty of lemons. Just a few examples. Thomas Edison, who from boyhood was very hard of hearing, invented the hearing aid, which, like his other inventions, turned out to be very profitable. So, Edison turned his hard of hearing lemon into a hearing aid lemonade. And as a bonus, he learned that when he really wanted to concentrate and not be disturbed, he simply took the hearing aids out. There was an Australian motivational speaker named Nick Vujicic, who wrote several best-selling books, conducted seminars, spoke to school groups about how to live a successful life. Everything he did was designed to implant the idea that you can succeed no matter who you are. And he did it all with an infectious sense of humor. What was his lemon? He was born with no arms and no legs. But he didn't let that get in the way of a rewarding, inspiring career. In fact, the title of his biography says it all. No arms, no legs, no worries. Mike was a young boy growing up in Detroit, and he was crazy about baseball. He followed the Detroit Tigers religiously, and he spent every spare minute playing the game with his neighborhood buddies. He was good at it too, and his dream was to one day play for the Detroit Tigers. Well, Mike grew up and spent 4 years serving in the military, and when he got home, he was signed to a 3-year contract playing shortstop for the Detroit Tigers farm team. He was thrilled. His dream was coming true. But then, Mike suffered a severe knee injury during a game, and the doctors told him he'd never play again. His dream was dashed. But Mike didn't just sit around feeling sorry for himself. He didn't know what to do next, but he wasn't going to do nothing. So, while he was trying to sort all of this out, he took a job in a local pizzeria. It turned out he was very good at making pizzas, so he started thinking about opening his own place. He did. And it went so well that within a few months he opened another, and then another, until soon he had a real honest-to-goodness chain of pizzerias. Today they're all over the world, and in the U.S. alone, there are more than 4,000 locations. You've heard of them, Little Caesars. Now, you may be thinking, that's a pretty good outcome, pretty good lemonade for a lemon, but that wasn't his ultimate lemonade. Mike Ilitch was not only the CEO of Little Caesars, he became the owner of the Detroit Tigers. Well, what is lemonade? Lemons, water, and sugar. That's pretty much it. And we've spent a lot of time talking about lemons, so now let's take a look at the water and the sugar. For millennia, water has symbolized spirit. That's the whole point of baptism. The ancient Israelites had daily washing rituals that were about more than just keeping clean. Hindus believe that water has spiritually cleansing powers, and so they go to the sacred rivers to restore themselves. The offering of water at Buddhist shrines symbolizes the desire to cultivate the virtues of calmness, clarity, and purity in the mind and body. Ernest Holmes, writing in the Science of Mind textbook, says, "The symbol of water is used to express the idea of a complete immersion in spirit. As water flows in and around, so are we immersed in an everlasting spirit which flows around in and through us. To be immersed in water symbolizes our recognition that we are surrounded by pure spirit. It is the outward sign of an inner conviction." So, we must apply the waters of spirit to our lemons. And how do we do that? Well, our tools are spiritual mind treatment, meditation, affirmations, and positive right action. And as I like to point out, we'll never be any more spiritual than we are right now, because all of spirit is present within us already. Our job is to learn to recognize it, to connect with it. Ernest Holmes again. "Since it is the mind which first must come to see, to know, and to understand, we shall do well to look to the mind for the answer to all our problems. Undoubtedly, we are surrounded by and immersed in a perfect life, a complete, normal, happy, sane, harmonious, and peaceful existence. But only as much of this life as we embody will really become ours to use." Several years ago, Alan Watts wrote a book titled "On the Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are." Once you know who you really are, you know the power you possess, and you know that nothing is impossible if you believe. Whatever your problems, the waters of spirit are ready to wash them away. Lemons and water. And now we add the sugar. For many people, sugar symbolizes love. "Hi, honey. Hi, sweetie. How you doing, sugar?" So we can say that when a problem hits, adding spirit and love is the way to rise above it. Now, you may be thinking, in the words of Tina Turner, what's love got to do with it? Well, we live in a universe that's run on just two things, really: law and love. The laws of life are mechanical, like gravity or inertia, but it's love that's at the heart of all creative thinking. And what we mostly need to turn our lemons into lemonade is creative thinking. And our ability to do that is severely limited without love. Ernest yet again. "The life that is not loved has not lived. It is still dead." Love is the sole impulse for creation, and the one who does not have love as the greatest incentive in life has never developed the real creative instinct. No one can swing out into the universal without love, for the whole universe is based on it. Emmett Fox was fond of saying that there is no problem so great that enough love cannot overcome it. Love is the product, the gift, the divine givingness, and law is the delivery system. It's as simple and as amazingly complex as that. Lemons, water, sugar, problems, spirit, and love. That's the recipe for life. One more story. I work on these talks all week. I do so on my computer, and every once in a while I hit save so that if my computer crashes, I won't lose all of that data. Yesterday, around 5 o'clock, when I was just about done, I somehow accidentally hit some weird combination of keys. and everything I had written wiped out, except for the last word I had typed. I tried hitting refresh, and nothing. I tried a File Explorer search, and nothing. Then I tried hitting refresh again, and I lost the one word I had just typed. My mouth went dry. My heart was pounding like a jackhammer. A week's work down the drain. And then I thought, now wait a minute. What was in that talk? Stay calm, trust spirit, react positively. So I took a few deep breaths, centered myself, and hit refresh again. Nothing. As a last resort, I X'd out the blank page that was staring me in the face. And a little box popped up saying, "Do you want to save the changes you made to lemons and lemonade?" Well, I stared at that little box for a minute, and it hit me. No. Whatever that last change was and however it happened, I don't want to save it. So I took another deep breath, and I clicked no. Presto. The entire talk, all 9 pages, reappeared. I'll bet you've never heard a prayer of gratitude that heartfelt. And after I sat in the glow of gratitude for a few moments, I went out and bought 2 gallons of lemonade. It'll be on the coffee table right after the service. I've got some regular lemonade and some sugar-free lemonade, and I even have some pink lemonade, and no, I didn't get it from the circus. So be sure to grab a glass after the service to remind yourself that when life hands you a lemon, don't suck on it and get sour. Make lemonade instead. Lemons and lemonade. 8 years before Dale Carnegie's book brought this interesting little phrase into the mainstream, a poetic rendition of it titled "The Optimist" appeared in a 1940 edition of the Rotarian magazine. And I'd like to close with it. Life handed him a lemon, as life sometimes will do. His friends looked on in pity, assuming he was through. They came upon him later, reclining in the shade, in calm contentment, drinking a glass of lemonade. Namaste.